بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد، قال العلماء باب التوبة. قال العلماء: التوبة واجبة من كل ذنب، فإن كانت المعصية بين العبد وبين الله تعالى لا تتعلق بحق آدمي فلها ثلاثة شروط: أحدها أن يقلع عن المعصية، والثاني أن يندم على فعلها، والثالث أن يعزم أن لا يعود إليها أبدا. فإن فقد أحد الثلاثة لم تصح توبته. وإن كانت المعصية تتعلق بآدمين فشروطها أربعة: هذه الثلاثة: وأن يبرأ من حق صاحبها، فإن كانت مالا أو نحوه رده إليه، وإن كانت حد قذف ونحوه مكنه منه أو طلب عفوه، وإن كانت غيبة استحله منها، ويجب أن يتوب من جميع الذنوب. فإن تاب من بعضها صحت توبته عند أهل الحق من ذلك الذنب وبقي عليه الباقي. وقد تظاهرت دلائل الكتاب والسنة وإجماع الأمة على وجوب التوبة. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى: وتوبوا إلى الله جميعا أيها المؤمنون لعلكم تفلحون. وقال سبحانه وتعالى: فقلت استغفروا ربكم إنه كان غفارا. وقال سبحانه وتعالى: يا أيها الذين آمنوا توبوا إلى الله توبة نصوحا. صدق الله العظيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم. Last week we were just concluding the chapter of Ikhlas. One thing we need to remember is, alhamdulillah, on a weekly basis we spare 20 minutes to 30 minutes, Mondays and Wednesdays. One reason why we keep it short is that we're able to adjust into our busy times, inshallah. Everybody has many tasks during the day, many other commitments. So inshallah, by keeping it short, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, we are able to inshallah make time for that. And at the same time, we need to reflect upon one more point, is that whatever we learn, these lessons and these gatherings are not just to gain information. We attend these gatherings, we sit in a ta'aleem, we take part in an event in bayan. The purpose of taking part in such events and gatherings and ta'aleem and durus is to reflect upon our life. That whatever points that were discussed, after we leave the gathering, what lessons do we learn from that? What points do I have in my life already? And what points do I need to bring into my life and I need to work upon? Then in that way, inshallah, we will gain, we will benefit. Yes, it may not be easy for us to bring everything into our life. But from 10 points mentioned, for example, we may be already practicing upon 2, 3 of them. However, the 4th and the 5th one we'll try. That, okay, this 4th point and the 5th point that was mentioned, let me see if I can implement and let me bring that into my practical life. Then inshallah, in that way, we will benefit. We will see the barakah. And at the same time, what we have to try to remember is that we continue punctuality. If something done small, some amal done in a smaller at a smaller level, at a smaller degree, but if it's done with consistency and punctuality, that is more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if a person, for example, has the only habit of reading 2 sides of Quran because of not able to read as fluent, but he's only able to read 2 sides every single day, but he does it continuously, that is good. And then inshallah he'll be able to build upon it afterwards, instead of just sitting once a month or once a year and finishing so many completions of the Quran. It's better that you do something small, but you do with punctuality, inshallah, that's more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then doing this, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put barakah in our time. Doing this in something with punctuality, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put barakah in our time. Not this Sunday, the Sunday before, when Salim Torah Sahib in his Sunday majlis, he mentioned, and then Maulana Shaykh Thani rahmatullahi alayhi, in his life, he passed away around the age of 79. But he said that in his life, he wrote around 1,000 books himself. He passed away around the age of 79, but he wrote around 1,000 books in his life. Now that along with other commitments and duties as well. It wasn't just that he was sitting down writing throughout the day. No, he had so many other duties and other commitments as well. But with those commitments and duties, because he was paband, he was continuously doing something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put barakah in his life, barakah in his time, that he was able to complete such a great amount of work whilst he was alive in his life. So when we have the punctuality, when we have the right intention, when we have the right motive, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put barakah in our life, barakah in our time, that we will be able to complete so many tasks in a short period of time. And if our intention especially is correct, the chapter is about ikhlas and intention. The title itself is actually Babul Ikhlasi wa Ihbari Niyyati. That for a person to have ikhlas in his intention, and wa Ihbari Niyyati means to have your focus, your intention should be there when we're doing the amal. Any amal, fi jami' al-amali wal-aqwali wal-af'ali. So in every action, our verbal, our physical, any sort of action that we do, we have our intention. So if you have the right intention, then something which looks just like soil and mud to us, that will become gold in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Somebody who's inside the masjid, if his intention is to be outside the masjid, then he won't get the reward of sitting inside the masjid. There's a kitab by the name of Ek Hazar Anmol Moti. Ek Hazar Anmol Moti, published by one of the publishers in Pakistan. They've got a collection of many great scholars. Their words of wisdom gathered into about three volumes. So in each volume there's about 100 snips of scholars. So in one of them, Sheikh Sa'di Rahmatullahi Alayhi. Sheikh Sa'di Rahmatullahi Alayhi is very famous, very Sufi, and he says that there was a king and a poor person. Both of them passed away. Somebody saw both of them in a dream, and they saw that the king is in Jannat, and this poor person who was known to be poor person and was also known to be a generous person, a pious person, he was actually in Jahannam. So it didn't come to mind. So they went to a Buzurg and they went for the meaning of the dream. So the Buzurg and the pious person gave the dream. The meaning of the dream is that this king, even though he was a king, but because his intention was to be like that poor and the pious person, so he may be at such a high level with many duties, but because his intention was to be like this poor person and like this pious person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him Jannah. And this poor person, pious person, even though he was poor, he wanted to be like the rich person and wasn't as focused as the first one. His intention was not as the first one. Then he ended up into Jahannam. Then he gives an example that if a person has come into the masjid and he's thinking about being outside, that when can I rush out of the masjid, then being in the masjid is to have reward, because his focus is always outside. And a person who's gone into the market and he's thinking that where can I come back to the masjid for my next salah, but because even though he's working in the markets, but his focus and his intention is towards the masjid and he's waiting for the next salah, he still gets the reward of being in the masjid. So our intention should be correct. Our focus and motive should be right during our day. Then inshallah everything will become easy. Everything will become easy for us. And at the same time, when we dedicate ourselves for the deen, when we dedicate ourselves to the deen, when we give our deen the commands of our deen priority, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make things possible for us. At times we think that I'm working, but salah time comes in the way, what can I do? But if your intention is there, your dua is there, your effort is there, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make things possible for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make things possible for us. At the same time, we have to see our practical life. What is our practical life showing? Is it according to our deen or not? If our practical life is according to our deen, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open up the ways. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open up the ways, and others around us will also observe that, and they will also consider that as well. I'm just giving an example. Yesterday, I'm sure some of us have watched the cricket match. Now, at the end, when the celebration was about to begin, people do say that yes, Mu'in and Abdul Rashid moved away. But if you were to observe, and my observation might be wrong, I'm not sure you can correct me, Before he moved away, the other guy nudged him first. Am I right or wrong? So the player that was next to him, he doesn't have iman with him, he doesn't believe in Allah. But he knew that Mu'in and Abdul Rashid, they have values. They have their Muslim values, their Islamic values, which they, always practicing upon and they have in their minds. So at that time when winning the World Cup, you go crazy. You don't have to think of anything else. But because they knew that these two individuals are not normal individuals, they value their faith, and they value their religion, they're practicing upon it throughout the league, throughout the year, throughout the days. So at that time, even though it's time of celebration, he nudged him and told him to move out. And the other ones made the way so them to can go before they open the alcohol and wine bottles. So like this, when we practice upon the deen, when we ourselves are observing the deen, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make things possible for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make ways for us as well, inshallah. So just to conclude that the first chapter was about chapter of Ikhlas. Mawlana Mas'ud Khan rahmatullahi alayhi, he says that the sole intention in our obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should only to please Him. And our obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should only be to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There should be no pleasure of and happiness of others or any other material gain or at all. Mufti Shafi Usmani rahmatullahi alayhi, he says that on the day of judgment our deeds will not be weighed according to numbers. Our deeds will not be weighed according to numbers on the day of judgment. What will matter is the quality. What will matter is the quality. And quality has there with two things, Iman and Ikhlas. When we have Iman and when we have Ikhlas and our intention is correct, then that action will have weight. And he gives the example of the Sahaba. If you look at the Sahaba, some of them didn't have large number of deeds in their amal. They may have just lived for a short while and they passed away. Or they only had possession of a small amount of wealth that they were able to spend in the path of Allah. But even that small, a handful of date that they gave, that was so weighty in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because they were high level of Iman and they had high level of Ikhlas. So like this, when we have high level of Iman and Ikhlas in our life, then every amal and every action of ours, inshallah, will be very weighty in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Shaykh rahmatullahi alayhi mentions in Fazail Salah, in the virtues of Salah, that the three things that we need to remember in Ikhlas. The three things that we need to remember in Ikhlas. Number one is that when we're offering the Salah, the sole purpose is to gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So any good deed that we do, the sole purpose should be to gain the happiness and the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number one, that's number one. Number two is that when we doing that good deed, we need to remind ourselves that I am able to do this through the tawfiq given to me by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's only I'm only able to do this amal because of the tawfiq that's given to me by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not because of my strength or anything else. It was only because of the ability given to me by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number three, that we have the hope in the promises that by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in that amal. That whatever the promises that He has put, we have the hope of earning those rewards. We have the hope of earning those rewards. So number one was that we are only doing that amal to seek the happiness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two, we are reminding ourselves that this amal is we are all able to do because of the tawfiq that's given to me by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number three, we only hope for the reward that's promised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we have these few points in our daily amal and daily tasks, then every amal inshallah will have ikhlas and will have some weight on the day of judgment and will be rewarded for it inshallah on the day of judgment. Last week we concluded the last hadith with two questions. That the rock that was blocking these three individuals in the cave, we put a question forward: is that what does this rock represent in our life? What does this rock represent in my life? Is it financial? Is it family? Is it work commitments, etc.? Whatever is blocking, being a means of a barrier and obstruction in my life. Number two was that do I have any amal in my life that I'm able to remove this difficulty and remove this obstruction from my life or not? And this is the time where we need to think as an ummah as well, that the ummah itself is facing difficulties. It seems as though there's something obstructing and becoming a barrier from the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala entering towards it and coming down to us. So we need to try to work out that what are those obstructions, what are those barriers that's becoming in the way of the nusrat and the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala coming to us. How do we remove this barrier? How do we remove this rock? Is turning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we seek forgiveness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and present our a'mal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the a'mal that I have done, inshallah, all of these a'mal will only be done for your sake. And inshallah, through turning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through seeking forgiveness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also presenting our a'mal, making sure that our intentions for our amals are correct, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's nusrat and the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come down to us. And this is where we link to the next chapter of Riyadh al-Salihin, which is Babu Tawbah. Babu Tawbah is about doing Tawbah and turning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, inshallah, we'll mention a few points about Tawbah. First of all, the word Tawbah comes from the word Taba Yatubu Tawbah in Arabic, which means to return, to come back, to return. So when a person had the habit of doing something, he returns from that, he comes back and returns from that action. Now when you look in the Islamic perspective and the Shari'iyat wise, the word Tawbah has been given different explanations. In one of the commentaries says that الرجوع من البعد عن الله تعالى إلى القرب إلى الله سبحانه وتعالى. Tawbah is to return from being far away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what Tawbah means, that a person was far away from Allah and he comes back and he does a turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Qurtubi rahmatullahi alayhi, he says that at-tawbatu ijtinabu dhanbin sabaqa minka mithluhu haqiqatan aw taqdeeran, which means that Tawbah is to refrain and is to stay away from a sin which a person has committed, haqiqatan aw taqdeeran. Haqiqatan means that he himself intentionally, with his own will, with his own power, he's done that sin. To you refrain from that, you stay away from that, and you turn away from that. That's haqiqatan. Or taqdeeran, one of the explanation of taqdeeran is that you didn't do that sin, but you became the means of others doing that sin. You became the means of other person or other people doing that sin. So you also turn yourself away from that, and you don't become the means of others doing that action. So if a person turns away from that, if a person returns from that, and he refrains from that, then that is called Tawbah. So one explanation of Tawbah is to return to our original state. To return to our original state. Now, original state is referring to when we are born. When a person is born, when a child and a baby is born, that baby is born free from sins. The slate is complete clean. It's complete shine, it's complete clean. So a person returns to that original state. To return to that state where the person has no sins in his life, there's no mark, there's no darkness in his slate and in his heart. To return back to that clean and pure, clean state again. That's another explanation. And then the last explanation for today is that Tawbah is to show the guilty feeling, regret and remorse. Regret and remorse of those actions that we have been doing, which are against the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever He has told us to do, we are not doing them. Or whatever He has told us not to do, and we are doing them. So whatever the do's are, we're not doing them. And whatever the don'ts are, we are doing them. Opposite. So when a person is in this and he feels guilty that I'm doing the opposite of the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have that guilty feeling, to have that regret and the remorse, it will lead a person to Tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah, we'll continue on this topic of Tawbah. The definition of Tawbah, we mentioned few. Then we have the categories of Tawbah, the benefits of Tawbah, the reasons of Tawbah, and what prevents people being from Tawbah. And the conditions of Tawbah will be mentioned in the kitab, the chapter itself. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our gatherings, accept our sittings, and give ikhlas in our a'mal, in our tasks of the day, and give us the ability to have the right intention for whatever we do during the day. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al mursalin. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Jazakum.